I woke up the following afternoon not having too much memory of what had happened, uh, but the police were at my door and arrested me, and I've been in prison ever since. So I'm Felix Rosado, and I'm calling from Phoenix State Prison here in Pennsylvania, where I've been fighting a death by incarceration sentence, more commonly known as life without parole, for the last 25 years, since the age of 18. School was always fun for me, especially because I excelled, and I just really enjoyed it. I loved going and returning in the afternoon to tell mom, what had happened, show her my latest grade on whatever test I just took, and my family was really proud of me. They thought, as you put it, Gabby, I was going to be the first one to go to college, to make something of myself. Once I got to high school, I started to skip a whole lot more, but I still did just enough to pass from grade to grade. And midway through my senior year is when I spent a few months in a juvenile detention center. And I was supposed to be expelled, but I had a juvenile probation officer who took an interest in me because of how good I was in school early on. And he actually took that information to a judge who gave me a break. And instead of sentencing me to a year in a youth forestry camp, he put me on intensive juvenile probation and allowed me to finish my senior year, which I did. And I actually graduated in front of my juvenile probation officer. But after I left the high school gymnasium that night, I went straight back to the corner to doing what I was doing before I went to go up there. And 6 months later is when I came to jail for murder, and have been here ever since. I still recall being woken up that following afternoon by a pounding on the wall. And it was the guy in the cell next door to me asking me to stick my arm out of the tray slot because he had something for me. And so I stuck my arm out. He put a rolled up newspaper into my hand. I pulled it back in. I sat down, opened it up, and saw myself on the front page, a picture that was taken as I was being perp walked from City Hall to the sheriff's van. And I started reading the story, and I remember dropping the paper and immediately falling to my knees and asking God to forgive me. And then there came a moment in 2004, 9 years into my incarceration, when I woke up. I realized that the way I was doing things wasn't working and that I had to try something different. I went through all the motions as a young boy, received the sacraments, but never really knew what was going on in any concrete way. And at around age 12, I think, is when I stopped going to church. And uncoincidentally, that's around the time I started getting sucked into the streets. But 10 years or so into my incarceration, I decided to get serious about a relationship with God. And there was no question about where I was going to turn. So I reached out to the Catholic chaplain at the time. He called me down to his office. We had a talk. I shared a lot of my story with him. I ended up confessing, and that weekend I went to Mass for the first time in a long time and received Holy Communion, haven't missed a mass since. A major part of how I stay hopeful, how I stay grounded, and it continues to fuel me in this otherwise difficult situation. I do. That said, I don't think I'll ever stop regretting it. I senselessly robbed humanity of a precious life, and I've resolved to do the work of two people as a result of that decision I made 25 years ago. And so there's nothing I can possibly or ever do to undo the pulling of that trigger on December 10th, 1995. But what I can and will do with all of my ability and all of my heart is try to prevent other people from having to experience that same kind of pain. So that's what it's about for me. That's my way of apologizing, because I believe words are cheap. So my actions have been and will continue to be my apology. Back in the beginning stages of my transformation, one of the weekly readings was a book called Transcending, and it's a photo essay book of people who've been victimized. And I remember sitting in my cell one afternoon doing the reading for class. Looking at all these faces and reading all these firsthand accounts of people who have gone through some indescribable pain. And I remember sitting there shedding a tear and coming to the reality for the first time that I had caused a family the same kind of pain I was reading about. And it really changed how I look at my situation, how I look at the world. And at the end of the book, the author started to talk about this thing called restorative justice. And I had never heard about it before. A way of doing justice that seeks to heal harm by involving those directly impacted by it, including those who caused it. But school was always important to me. And even when I got back into it 10 years into my incarceration, I was a little worried that I didn't have it anymore, that since I hadn't stepped in a classroom in all those years, I wasn't going to be good. But once I got that first A on that first paper, I knew I still had it. and it was all A's from then on. It was really important to me to graduate with highest honors, because I wanted to do that for Mom. And giving that valedictorian speech in front of a chapel full of people, including my mom, at Gradeford State Prison was one of the highlights of my life. I'll never forget it. And when I was able to walk down and hand her my degree, I just felt like I had a little piece of redemption that afternoon. I had caused her indescribable suffering, and I felt like in that moment I was able to put a little bit of joy back in her heart. The same joy that she used to have when I brought home those straight A report cards from elementary school. In 2007, 12 years into my incarceration, I got a letter from a brother that I had never known. He's my biological father's other son, and my biological father was never in my life. So I got a Christmas card from him and his then girlfriend at the time, out of nowhere. And so we started to exchange a few letters. They started to come to visit me from New Jersey. And so we got to know each other. And next thing, they were getting engaged and then married and then pregnant. And then they came up to the visit room at Gradeford one day to ask me if I would be their son's godfather. And in the Catholic Church, that's a big deal. So I know that I would be responsible for this boy's spiritual development. And I also knew that I would have to do most, if not all of it, from behind a 30-foot high concrete wall. So I had to think about it. I prayed on it. And then after all that, though, I knew there was no way I could say no. My nephew Dean, who's about to be 10 now, brings me so much pride and happiness. And being asked to be his godfather and take on that kind of responsibility is definitely one of the things I'm most proud of. Because of where I'm at and what I've been through, it was just a huge honor and continues to be. I'm working on getting out of here a few different ways, but the one that has risen to the top of late is Commutation. The one thing I have to say that I enjoyed about that process is that I was actually talking about what I did, who I am now, and why I believe I deserve to get a second chance, as opposed to arguing this or that legal technicality or what my lawyer did or didn't do at trial, which is what the appeal process is all about. This felt more real. It's simply a plea for mercy. And I'm just different because I see the world differently. I see myself as interconnected with everyone and everything else. I was selfish as a boy. I couldn't see past myself and my own needs. The main difference is I'm concerned with everything around me, just as much as I'm concerned for myself. I think I can be an asset to the community on the outside. I've gained a lot of skills and a lot of understanding here that could do the community on the outside a lot of good. I've dedicated my life to service, and so that's only going to continue once I'm home. And I look forward to continuing with all the things I'm involved in here once I'm outside on a larger scale and with the ability to reach more people. So my goal is just to try to put things as right as possible, because I did a lot of damage when I was home. And so this situation actually prevents me from doing that in so many ways. So I'm just yearning for the opportunity to go out there and make some good. I'm looking forward to some of the small things, like just being able to take a walk in the park, to eat my mother's cooking, to go for a swim, or to just hang out at home, kick back on the couch and watch TV or lay in bed, a real bed. And I look forward to the work I'm going to be doing. I look forward to getting out there every day and, making a difference. But I especially look forward to spending time with my family. Most of my cousins and most of their kids were born after my arrest. So I look forward to meeting everyone, really for the first time, and also spending time with those who I left behind 25 years ago. A lot has changed, obviously, and I'm not looking to make up for lost time, but I'm just looking to start my life, outside of this place.